Okay. So last few class we have been discussing about scanning electron microscope, especially the different variants of scanning electron microscope, and we also try to look at the fundamental principles of this different kind of scanning electron microscope. So we also briefed about what is actually the thermionic emission, what is field emission gun, and how does this conventional microscope, generally we call conventional microscope, which generally we used it for a micron size material. Nowadays, we start using this scanning electron microscope for nanomaterials also. So for that, we need a field emission gun scanning electron microscope. So that's the fundamentals of these two different microscope we discussed in the last class, and why we are getting the better resolution. And we also continue in this class how this field emission gun itself, we have two different microscope. We have one is a Scotty-Feg, another one is a Cold-Feg. We'll start with the, if you ask me strict sense, which one is actually the field emission gun? Strict sense, Cold-Feg is actually the really a field emission gun. Scotty-Feg is actually, it combines both thermionic as well as the field emission principle. So, but most of the machines, whatever is there in the commercial machines, are actually work based on the principle of Scotty-Feg, except the Hitachi machine. So today's class we'll try to see what is Scotty-Feg and what is field emission Cold-Feg, and then we will discuss about the lenses, and then we'll start discussing about the interaction between the sample and the electron, and how does various kind of signals we get from which region this kind of let's say we discussed earlier, secondary electron, backscatter electron, Auger electron, then we have X-rays. So all those things are coming from sample. What does it mean? Why all these signals are different, from which region it is coming? So all those things we'll discuss. Possibly, if time permits, we'll start the secondary electron part. Okay, so this is what today's class. So let me share the screen now. So last class we discussed that work function is something which is actually very, very crucial in the designing of electron microscope. So when we use the work function 4 eV, and if you use lanthanum hexaborate, so we have seen in a thermionic emission also we have two different filament. One is tungsten filament, another one is lanthanum hexaborate filament that has a 2.6. If I look at the unit, yeah, it's correct. 2.7 eV. So the temperature at which it works is 2700 K, and this is 1700
So
K.
the screen is not visible.
Okay. 1 minute. Is it visible now?
Yes, sir.
Okay, fine. So in thermionic emission itself, we have two electron gun. One is actually tungsten-based pin type filament. Another one is a lanthanum hexaborate filament. So lanthanum hexaborate filaments are actually better in terms of resolution, because so tungsten filaments are like this. So lanthanum hexaborate filaments are like this. So you're going to get a lower crossover. We also discussed, and especially if you look at a field emission gun, there is a machine called Calgis. Calgis machines are having a Gemini column. It doesn't have any crossover. So, but now this is about the thermionic emission. In a field emission gun also, what we do is we also use same tungsten filament here. But the only difference here is actually, you can see here, it is actually it is very sharp at the tip. So we discussed in the last class that what is the reason for a sharp tip. Basically, when you actually apply voltage between these two regions, so you start seeing electrons are accumulated in this, electron density significantly increases at the sharp tip, then it will come out with a small bias. So this is how this works. So in this particular, even though we are using tungsten filament, you can actually pull electron at room temperature. So that's the beauty of So that is the reason we are called the cold FEC, cold field emission field emitters. So you don't means you are overcoming the work function by tunneling method. For that you need a sharp tip, then the electric field. These are the combination, sharp tip and electric field. So that gives you a tunneling effect by which you can actually get an electron. Okay. That's what it's the field is obtained by using a sharp tip 1000 Armstrong degree. The emission temperature is independent. Independent means you don't need, you're not worrying about anything. Even you do at 2700 also, you will get emission. You do at room temperature, you get emission. Since we are not hitting the element, let's say that if I said tungsten filament, you heat 2700 K, and on the other hand, use lanthanum hexaborate 1700 K. So this filament, as I said, it will come only for 100 hours. So this filament, because of at low temperature, you will get at 1000 hour. On the other hand, what do we do here is we are not heating the filament at all. So the lifetime is, people say it's 7 years or longer. That means once you install it, you are not, it means you need not to worry about the filament part. Means it will be there for a very, very long time. So another point we will discuss about this one little bit later about the lower energy spread. We will discuss in detail. Maybe when we discuss about the various parameters in SEM, how does this various parameters affect the low voltage, energy spread, depending on the voltage, how we are getting the resolution. So that can be, you can understand only when we talk about, understand the interaction volume. That is what we are going to do in this class. What is interaction volume? How does this electron and specimen interact? So this is something I can explain only after discussing about the interaction volume. So impervious to the power interruption. So because you don't need, but again the problem is only the filament wise it is impervious to power interruption. But if you look at the vacuum level, we need a very high vacuum level because you are actually pulling electron from the particular material at a very low temperature. So that means even if you have a small water molecule absorbed on those surfaces, that can actually give you a problem. It's always to have very, very high vacuum levels so that you don't have any accumulation of any dust or any gas molecules or any molecules which is sitting on those surfaces. For that, you need a very high vacuum level. To maintain a vacuum level, you need power. Without power, you cannot actually maintain the vacuum level. So that way, though we don't need power for the electron gun, but we need power for maintaining the vacuum. So this is what about the field emission. Cold FEC. This is actually strict sense. Strict sense, if you are talking about a field emission electron microscope. So the cold FEC is actually the true field emission scanning electron microscope. What we have is a Scotty FEC. Scotty FEC actually use both thermionic plus field emission. Okay. So what we do actually here is by applying a thermal, we actually overcome certain work function level. Okay. So beyond that, what we do is actually use a field to pull the electron. So that means you have to overcome only this much of barrier, not the entire barrier. You're going to overcome, but you're going to overcome little bit of barrier, and then you're going to use the tunneling effect. See, basically, in this part is here, thermionic part is here. Then automatically use a field emission, you can get a electron out. So how does it work? See, if you look at the field emission. Let's say that you talk about cold FEC, you have this is your connections. you have sharp. So this is for cold fake. So what you see here is slightly different. This part is almost similar. There is something else is sitting on this surfaces. Zirconium oxide dispenser. Okay. So what is actually the fundamental here is actually this concept is same, and you have additionally ZRO dispenser. So the what is the role of this particular ZRO dispenser is, let's say that when you heat it, okay, we are heating this particular, and now we are heating this entire arrangement. Now when you heat it, this will actually form a layer of ZRO on these surfaces. Okay, so when you heat it, you're going to get a layer of ZRO layer. It may not be ZRO2, or generally we call it ZROX. It may not be exactly stoichiometry. You may have some amount of oxygen diffusion or system, but generally when you heat it, this will take some amount of oxygen and it will actually form a layer over this. So now what is actually the, now you apply a fill, means now what you have done is actually you are heating this particular one. You're not hitting to the 2700. If you look at the working region, you look at here, it is only 3 electron volt. Why? And again, the operating temperature is 1700. But on the other hand, if you are using a tungsten filament, you have to go up to 2700. But it's almost closer to the what do we do in the LAB6. But again, if you look at here, the work function wise, it is slightly higher. That means you have to do slightly higher temperature. Let's say 1900 or 2000, you have to go. But that part we are achieving through the remainder, let's say the partially, let's say by doing this one, you are achieving the work function up to 2.7. Still you have remain like 2.4. Remaining you have 0.6. That 0.6 that you are achieving through the field emission. So this is what the combination that it works. That means this ZRO2, ZROX, it's something that actually from that one only we are getting electron, because we need to worry about only the work function of ZRO. We are not actually worrying about the work function of tungsten, because the electrons are actually coming out of this particular ZRO layer. So that means when you continuously work because of sputtering, because electrons are coming out, this also will get damaged. That means you have to supply continuously to the ZRO. So that is one of the reason why the Scotty you require to replace it maybe after 1.5 to 2 years. If you look at the lifetime, but if you look at lifetime, generally it will be 2 years. This can be 7 years, but it is not clear here. So one thing is that we are operating at a slightly higher temperature. The life of the filament depends on your operating temperature. Okay, another thing is the material. So what do we do here is, though we use a tungsten, and another thing is electrons are coming out of ZROX. So this is actually electron. So this combination, if it doesn't work, then automatically you have to change the filament. So this is actually the difference between the Scotty fake and the cold fake. So in cold fake, we are actually using the advantage. What we are gaining from here is, because still you have a very sharp tip. So that is going to allow us to have a same crossover. That means resolution is also better. Okay. We will see this part. Yeah, cathode biggest like thermioelectric modified by adding isotope to lower the value of work function, which we already discussed. Scotty gun is a field assisted thermionic emitter. So that's what I said, partially field assisted, because this work function we are overcoming by using the field, using the electric field. This part we will discuss, as we said earlier, at low voltages due to low energy spread, larger energy spread, we may not actually get a such a resolution what we are getting in the Colfec. So as I told you earlier, the lifetime is actually 2 years or less. So that is actually 7 years for Colfec. This is actually the uh, slightly at a lower lifetime because of temperature involved. The one advantage is the vacuum level required here is actually lower compared to Colfec. So I will give this as an assignment. What is the reason for vacuum in the electron microscope, and why we have a different vacuum level in the different microscope? Lanthanum hexaboride. If you look at this part alone, the vacuum level, why we have a different vacuum level in a different microscope. So that I think you should try to. I'll send this also as an assignment. Why we have a different vacuum level in a different microscope? What is the reason for that? Okay. Okay. So one more thing that see, now you can ask me another question. Why not we have an entire part is made up of, let's say that this is actually a shape that you want. You make everything in ZrO2. What is the problem? So you have a ZrO2 crystals. Why don't we make ZrO2 as a crystal and may use it as an electron gun? We don't use it because to getting this sharp tip, okay, getting this sharp tip, that we usually do a etching process, is an electrochemical etching process. Such a sharp edges are not easy to get by other method. So that is the reason we use the etching process, especially electrochemical etching process that we use. But that can't be done for this ZrO2 reserve. Again, handling this ZrO is not that easy. These are very brittle material. So these are the two reasons why actually we don't use ZrO2 as a filament, rather than we use it as a coating material to again pull an electron. So in both the cases, actually we use a single crystal or a tungsten, which is oriented in the 110 plane. Yeah. So if you look at this Cartier meter, this is your 100 plane. This is your the reason why we are using this is that particular crystallographic orientation gives you the lower work function than the other configuration. Okay. Because we would like to work at the lowest possible work function. So this particular crystallographic plane gives us the lowest work function. So this is what the basics of different kind of electron microscopy what we have. If you ask me in terms of cost, this microscope, you forget about other accessories, CDS, this can be around 40 to 50 lakhs. Maybe now it may be slightly higher. So this will be slightly higher, maybe around 60 to 70 lakhs. These two microscope, almost we need around 1.5 to 1.7 crore. This also would be in a similar. So this is the difference in terms of the investment. So that is the reason actually, in fact, this is actually good actually. If you have LAB6 filament, it's actually a good machine. But in general, you look at any, in worldwide, if you look at all conventional microscope, this may be around 95% in the worldwide machine. If you look at, compare all the FEM field emission gun machine, this may be around 90%. This could be only 10%. Because this is actually the problem. Vacuum level. Because for maintaining such a high vacuum level, your maintenance cost will be extremely high. So that is actually the problem. The advantage what you are gaining is very little. If you look at here, the crossover size is 15 here, the crossover size is 3 here. It doesn't make much difference. If you compare 10 power 5 and 10 power 4, now you are actually 10. That means one order. So 10 and 3 are not actually significantly different. That means you're not getting additional resolution in the cold effect. That is the reason actually, because you have to spend such a large quantum of money for installation. For means you have a lot of, see, when you have a high vacuum level, such a big instrument, if you have a lot of power fluctuation, it is always actually difficult to use these machines. So that's the reason actually people prefer to have a cold effect. If you look at in India, I think there are very few machines which are actually cold effect. Mostly this Scott effect is something, it is readily available in most of the places. In fact, in all IITs, they have except IIT Jodhpur. Okay, if you have any questions, you can ask me, then we'll go to the next topic. Any questions? So why I'm not getting any questions from this? Yes, you should ask. Yes.
So in the Scott effect, there is a use of zirconium oxide dispenser. So as you know that zirconium oxide is a brittle means ceramic material, and there's a due to temperature there's a phase change. So means monoclinic from monoclinic to tetragonal there is a phase change. So while release of electrons, does this phase change have an effect on that?
Yeah,
Because
what you're
from
saying,
that
yeah, yes, I know that. See, this phase transformation occurs around generally around 1000 to 1100 degrees centigrade. In fact, that is taken into account because the ZrO2 what we need is, it's not actually stabilized zirconium. Generally, see, whenever you use zirconium oxide, we say yttria stabilized or stabilized zirconium we use because we don't want any phase transformation. But in this system, we are taking into account of that phase transformation also.
so
This goes through a transformation.
So in case
But there is a volume change. See, yeah, it is not stabilized. This particular ZrO2 is not stabilized. I mean, generally we add yttria to stabilize it.
Yes, sir.
But it doesn't. We don't have any yttria here, so it's simple ZrO2. See, the main problem why do we don't want this phase transformation is because of the significant volume change. Okay. So whenever you have this ZrO2, it goes to monoclinic to, I don't know, some
tetragonal, then to cubic.
Okay, so these transformations are a significant volume change. We don't want as a bulk material, because if it goes through as a bulk material, we have a problem. But what is that we are doing here is, this is actually here forming a layer of a coating. Okay, so it doesn't give a much problem, but you can ask me any coating. See, if you are coating, if you ask me, see, coating is the biggest problem when you have a volume change, because if you have two different material, when you heat it, both are going to have one is having one coefficient of thermal expansion, another one is going to have another coefficient of thermal expansion. If you have additional volume change, automatically this layer will come off. But what is happening here is actually ZrO2 is actually forming as a layer only while you are heating. So that way it doesn't give a much of problem. So it is volume changes happening during the process, but again it is forming a layer.
Okay, sir. Sir, but there is a coating also.
There is a coating, but say let's say that the coating which is formed a stable one. Let's say 1100. Let's say this is coming out from this particular region is at 1100. At 1100, after 1100, you don't have any phase transformation. So that way you're not getting into any problem. The stable phase is the one which is actually getting coated on the surface of this tungsten.
Okay, sir.
Okay. Any other question? Okay, fine. If there are no questions, then I can go to the next part.
So there is a question in the chat box that does that coating have an effect on electron release?
No. See coating. See the coating is the one from there only electron is released. See the question is here the electron is released not from the tungsten. Okay. In cold phase, the electron is released from tungsten. What is happening here is the electron is released from the ZrO2 or ZrOx. So that is the reason if you look at both the cases, we use a filament material is tungsten, but the work function is different. How come you can have a, because it's a work function is a material dependent. Use some other material, will have a different work function. You have a different work function because it is a ZrO2 is the one which is actually releasing the electron, not the tungsten. Tungsten, the purpose is to get the sharp tip, which you may not able to do it in the ZrO2. Again, as she said, again, ZrO2 has a lot of phase transformation. When you have a material, bulk material, so many phase transformation, then it is difficult to work. Because this is actually, you are actually giving a joint, well joint can break. So these are the reason why we are not using ZrO as it is as a electron gun. Any other question? Okay. And if there are no questions, then I can go to the next part. But again, we will come, this part we didn't discuss. We will discuss this point a little bit later. Brightness, we didn't discuss so far in detail. As I said, energy spread, we'll also discuss energy spread and the emission current. So all this part we will discuss in detail about the how does this operating parameter we need to control in electron microscope to get a best possible image. It's not that, let's say if the machine works with the 5 kV to 30 kV, you may wonder or think that okay, if I use 30 kV, will be getting a best resolution, but that is not the case. Same way, energy spread actually you can actually vary at a different level. In what condition, at what kV that you have to use, what energy spread, again, how does this brightness you can control it. So all those things that we will discuss in detail with some of the examples. And again, the fundamental principle also we'll discuss. Possibly we will do the same thing in the lab class. Means when I take a lab class, I'll change that all those parameters in a SCM and I can show you at a same constant voltage. If I change the brightness, if I change the emission current, if I change the probe current, how this is going to have an impact on the image. Same thing, if I change the kV, what happens to the image? Suppose if you have a polymeric sample, you may get a very good resolution, very good image at 5 kV, but same 5 kV, it may not be good for a metallic sample or ceramic sample, but again, it differs. Okay, sometimes metallic sample, you may get 25 kV, you may get a good result. But suppose another sample which is having hygroscopic in nature, then again you have to come down the value from 25 kV to 5 kV or 10 kV. So all those part that we'll discuss in the class, and also we'll discuss whatever is possible, we also discuss in the lab class also. So that you'll get on a feel how important is to change the parameter to get a best possible image. It is applicable not only for SEM, it is applicable for TEM also, but unfortunately we don't have TEM here. So I cannot explain to you much, but at least whatever is possible, try to explain. Okay, so these are the microstructure people have taken in the field emission gun ACM. You can look at all these are very, very small picture. This is actually a 2 micrometer. So these are only 200 nanometer. Those who are working on 2D materials, those who are working on nanomaterials, you cannot use a conventional microscope ACM to get all these images. So we don't actually get it in a conventional microscope. You can actually go up to level 4 to 5 micrometer feature size. If you have, then you can get reasonably a good resolution. But again, depends on the machine and depends on the operator. Again, depends on your sample preparation also. That is very important. One part, though I may not discuss in this particular class, if you look at this image is very poor. If you look at these regions, or I can see there is a charging. Okay, we'll discuss about charging a little bit in the theory class, and maybe in a lab class I can show you, like if I have a different coating thickness, how this charging can have an impact on the means how to avoid this charging, and what kind of coating that we have to do. Depending on the coating thickness, you can get a different resolution in microscope, but again that can have an impact on your EDS analysis also. Okay, so that also we will discuss. So all these images are taken in the field emission gun scanning electron microscope. These microstructures we cannot actually do it you cannot obtain this kind of microstructure in the conventional thermionic principle based microscope. So, but the main point that I'm saying is, like, suppose if we talk about TEM, the fundamental principles are almost same. In TEM also we have tungsten filament, pin based filament. In TEM also we have LAB6 filament. In TEM also we have same Scotty-FEC and cold-FEC. That means I need not to repeat whatever that I have done here. It is applicable. Suppose someone is saying that I am having a LAB6 filament in my SEM TEM. That means it is a conventional TEM, but as a better filament compared to the tungsten filament. Okay, so TEM and SEM, the filament types are almost, the working principles are same. Okay, that you should need to remember. Whatever I teach you here, it is applicable to TEM also. Okay, now next part we will go. Next part is the electromagnetic lens. Electromagnetic lens, as I said earlier, one thing is actually the focusing the beam as well as spreading the beam. So basically you have a magnetic coils. We'll also discuss a little bit more about magnetic coils when we go into the TEM part, the role of magnetic coils. So you have a magnetic coil which actually means allow us to converge or diverge the beam depending on the requirement. Another thing is the F, the focal length. So if you look at any microscope, this is K is a constant. U is the accelerating voltage. U is something that, say, if you are using an ACM, we actually vary the U from 55 to 30 kV. In TEM, in general, this is in SEM. In TEM, we may go from 80 to 300 kV. But if you have aberration corrected TEM, you can actually work from 20 kV to generally aberration correct. You can go up to 30 kV. This is how we work. So for a particular, let's say that you are using when you are taking a particular image, you use a constant accelerating voltage. Okay, this is actually a constant. So now the bindings are actually it's actually a physical parameters which actually you are not going to vary when you change the parameters. It's already there it's actually a hardware. So now only thing what you are varying is the lens current. By changing the lens current, This is what we will vary. The lens current, the lens you apply a certain lens current. Based on that lens current, you can change the focal length. You can you can converge the beam, you can diverge the beam, and again you can change the magnification also. So this is the job of this electromagnetic lens. We will discuss a little bit more in the when we go in the TEM part, because there we used to go from one mode to another. We'll go to image mode to diffraction mode also. So that also can be done using this electromagnetic lenses. So that's the part that we will discuss. What is image mode, what is a diffraction mode, because you are actually going for a different focal length. You can go by changing the lens current. What we need is you have to go over to a different focal length to get a image and the diffraction. Image happens in a real plane. Diffraction happens in the uh, it happens in the what do you call? Forgot that name. It happens in a back focal length, but it happens in a reciprocal space. Okay, so those mode also we can go by controlling the electromagnetic lens current. So that is what we will discuss more about this electromagnetic lens in the TEM part. Okay, now this is the most important thing that you should need to understand. How does now so far what we did is how to generate electron, then how to accelerate the electron, then how to focus the electron beam on the sample. Okay, now let's say that you got electron. Okay, now it is getting focused. Okay, what we are going to do is you are going to focus on the sample. Let's say this is your sample. Okay, now this is your sample. Okay, so this is your surface. So what do we do in we have a coil. We have a coil which actually allow us to move from different locations. So basically we actually this if we are sample like this, we'll scan it. We'll scan the sample. So this function is done by scanning coils. Okay. Now let us assume that you are at a one particular spot. Let's say this is your sample. This is your electron beam. Okay. Now, what do we think that is actually that the sample interacts, and from this location we are getting the signal. So this is your incoming. We are assuming these are the signals. Let's say that you have so many signals are coming out from the sample. Let's say secondary electron, backscatter electron, X-rays, EES. This is what we usually think that okay, this is how it is coming up. But in reality is that it is not the case. So we generally we say it will be like this. Okay, so the signal what you are getting from the sample is not only from this region alone. So we are actually getting a signal. This is what we call interaction volume. So we are getting a signal from this entire volume. Again, in the entire volume, we have a different region. Let's say this is actually a simulated molecular dynamics simulated the molecular dynamics simulated beam path. So this is actually the some of the things are incoming electron, then these are something which is actually going out from these samples. These are secondary. Let's say this is actually from sample electrons. So you can see that you have, this is the region that you have, then you have so much of region which is actually, this is what we call interaction. In fact, this is your interaction volume. Okay. But this interaction volume varies based on several operating parameters. Okay, so that is what we are going to control. We would like to have a smallest possible small interaction volume. Is always to better to have a better resolution image, but that's it's not actually always true. But depending on what kind of information you need, you have to change the interaction volume. That we will discuss. First, let us see, this is your interaction volume. And again, interaction volume consists of what? That we will discuss. Okay, then we will now you can see this, but again we'll discuss in detail about this aspect. Let's say that you have a sample. Now, if we increase the accelerating voltage, let's say that you work at 5 kV, this is your interaction volume. So if you change the kV, 10 kV, you have this much is the interaction volume. You have a, let's say 25 kV, you have, this is your interaction volume. As I told you earlier, we would like to have a lower interaction volume. That means the sample which is having the 5 kV should show the highest resolution, but that may not be always true. Okay, you may get a better resolution here also. Okay, so that part we will discuss a little bit. We'll discuss later once I start explaining to you about a secondary electron, and then you will get an idea why even at a high accelerating voltage with a higher interaction volume we get a better resolution images. So that also we will discuss. Another thing, if you look at this interaction volume, the interaction volume, suppose you keep the voltage is constant. Let's say you keep 10 kV, 10 kV and 10 kV. Now you use the material. So this region is having, let's say you have atomic number 70. This region you have atomic number 35. This region you have atomic number 10. You can see this is atomic number. So the material which is having the lower atomic number, you're going to have a larger interaction volume. So this also gives you a clue that depending on a material, your optimum voltage is going to change. Is it correct? Now if it changes, let's say I have a material, two different material. One is actually heavy ceramic material, another one is let's say you have a carbonaceous low atomic number material, tungsten and the carbon. Then the operating voltage is not, it is not actually a constant. So the interaction volume is actually changing. It's changing as a function of voltage. Also it's changing as a function of atomic number. Now you just at this point you try to only understand this point. We'll discuss about all this parameter a little bit later about when we look at the image, when we change the different operating parameters, how does the image resolution or image quality changes. Okay. Now let us look at the interaction volume. As I said earlier, when incident beam you have, then we start getting a secondary electron, we get a backscatter electron, we get a OJ electron, we get a characteristic X rays. So we get a different signal. This is your electron beam. We are always think that this is our only from this region we are assuming that the signals are coming for our analysis, but it is not actually true. So this is the region we get a OJ electron. Okay. So this is the region from which we get the secondary electron. Okay. Now let's see. It's two things is important. The one thing is that the volume should be low to have a better resolution. Okay. Another thing is from the surface, the height means from the, see, if you look at OJ electrons coming from the top of the surface. Secondary electrons are actually, it is slightly higher interaction volume and it is coming slightly from the lower side. Means if you go deeper and deeper, your resolution is going to, means one thing is you should have a narrow and narrow. Narrow can give you the better resolution. Another thing is if it is going deeper, let's say that you compare, see, generally for imaging purpose we use backscatter electron, another one is a secondary electron. Now you look at this secondary electron, interaction volume is pretty low compared to the backscatter electron. This is the region from where the backscatter electron is actually coming out. So this is the region from which BSc. From here it is very clear, secondary electron is going to have a smaller interaction volume and it is coming from the, relatively if you compare BSc and the secondary electron, it is coming from the top of the surface. That means this is going to have a better resolution. So why this number, this is better in terms of it is coming from the top of the surface. We'll discuss a little bit later in this particular, it may not be in this class, today's class, maybe in the next class we will discuss. Okay. So this is also imaging purpose we use, that other one is also we are using for a imaging purpose, but it's slightly for a different application. In a different context, we use it in a different application, we use backscatter electron. But in general, whenever we talk about SEM image, which more of the secondary electron, but we do need a backscatter electron image also in many cases. And we'll also try to understand the fundamental principle of both secondary electron and backscatter. Those are completely different. Okay. So these two, we use it for a imaging purpose. So we usually get a X-rays which are generated. X-rays are generated from this entire volume. So these are something we call characteristic X-rays, which is actually important because this is what is very important. We'll discuss in SEM, XRD, characteristic X-ray. It is useful for analysis. So we also get continuous X-rays. So this is actually a continuous X-rays. We call continuum X-rays, which is not useful for we will discuss about this, what is continuous X-rays and what is the characteristic X-rays in the X-ray diffraction portion. And we also discuss about the fluorescent that is also not good for the analysis. So this is, we don't want fluorescence. That also we'll discuss when we discuss about the X-ray diffraction portion. But as a whole, we can see clearly that the spatial resolution for a secondary electron is going to be much better than a backscatter electron. The poorest is going to be the X-rays. But another thing is, if you don't have sufficiently higher voltage, you may not get a signal which is large enough for a quantitative measurement of continuum monoxide, especially we do use this particular signal in a ADS analysis. Okay. So we'll discuss in detail about all these things in the next class. Okay. Thank you. If you have any questions, you can ask me. So now let's stop now. Any other questions that you have?